Blessings, friends. Since October is ADHD Awareness Month, I'd like to share with you guys what I first learned in my experience when I first learned my son had ADHD. I actually had a friend at the time who has kids that have ADHD, and she kept saying to me, "Girl, I think your son might have ADHD." But I kept denying it because there's this stigma that something's wrong with kids who have ADHD, and I did not want anything to be wrong with my son. For context, my son is now 12 in the 7th grade, but this goes back to the 1st grade. So he kept getting in trouble in class for talking when he's not supposed to, getting out of his seat, being super distracted. And you know, when your child's your child, you're like, okay, I'm used to that. I'm used to him running around the house like he has no cutoff switch. I'm used to him being super distracted. But of course, this was coming from school, so I began to get a little concerned. And then his teacher at the time asked if I considered getting him tested for ADHD. And I'm like, how do you do that? So we met with his pediatrician, and she recommended us to a doctor who we went to see him, and he asked my son some questions. It was so funny because he asked him about a car, and my son talked and talked and talked about all the cars, the Hot Wheels he has, and he just went all over the place. I was like, oh. And so, of course, I received an email and information from him that he does indeed have ADHD. So back to at school, he was put on this program or disciplinary, I don't even know what you call it, where it's called Red Day, Green Day folder. And if you get a certain amount of red days during the calendar, I guess the month, then you will get kicked out of school. And so, of course, I'm freaking out. I'm like, I don't want my son to get kicked out of school. I'm a research girl, so I start researching, and I find out that if your child's behavior is related to their disability, which I don't even like to call it that, then they can't be kicked out of school. So they gave me a little piece, but at the same time, I'm still worried. He's still coming home with, Mom, I got a red day, and I'm trying not to react some kind of way because I don't want him, because he's already worried about it. I don't want him to be like, oh, Mom's mad at me. But I just talked to him about his behavior, and we worked on getting him more green days. And even with the stress of that, again, researching, I found out that if you have ADHD, that you can either be on a 504 plan or an IEP, depending on, what word do I want to use, how extreme it is. And so I met with the school. Actually, let me backtrack. I told my mother, and she said, y'all know how we have family members, like my mom called her sister, like they were really, really close. And she said, you should call Carla so she can advocate for you. And I remember in my research seeing that you can get an advocate. And so I contacted Carla, and then we met up with the school. Stay tuned for part 2.